My name is Jordan Brady. I'm a father, I'm a filmmaker, and I'm the founder of Commercial Directing Film School. My occupation is commercial director, so sort of my side hustle is teaching a new generation how to do what I do.
So Jordan, thank you so much for taking a moment to sit down with me today.
I love this.
I'm so excited.
I don't even know what we're going to talk about.
Me neither. No, that is what makes it so exciting for me, is I feel like we get to have this conversation and kind of meet for the first time, and everybody watching gets to meet and learn about you too. So before we really get into the things you mentioned in your intro, what do you think people's first impression of you is?
I think people's first impression of me, honestly, is just a creative person and approachable, accessible, and hopefully somewhat empathetic. I've had to work on that part. But, you know, I'm usually in a t-shirt and my hair is unmanageable, so people think, oh, you're some sort of creative person. And they're right. And lazy. That's part of the thing too.
Well, you answered my next question, which is what makes you think you give off that creative vibe. But now my second question would be, why do you feel you had to work on the empathetic part?
Well, empathy and humility for me was a lesson learned later in life, because I was very narcissistic and ego-driven as a younger man. And I actually think that ego can fuel success. If you're a filmmaker, right? Omari's a filmmaker. He has to say, and I have to say, hey, out of all of us in this room, my take on this story is the one that matters most. That's ego. But then you learn to balance it with humility and empathy that, oh, okay, there's a team of people. I have to work with everyone. And so that took me personally a little bit longer to learn.
Do you think that's had an impact on your life outside of what you do for a living?
Huge.
Talk
Huge.
about that.
Well, I think, I was married young, and I think my ex-wife and I both had strong egos, and I think there's a clash of the titans on that. So as I aged, I learned, there's more give and take in a relationship. I think I was a better husband second time around. I became a better father, although I was always a pretty good father. But I listened a little better. And now being able to give back to other filmmakers, not just when I say new filmmakers, I don't mean necessarily they're younger, but they usually are. But there's people in their middle-aged years and later in their career that I get to work with, and I think they're having the same kind of realization as me, that hey, maybe we're in a new era of awakening where it's cool to give back. It's cool to be more of a team player and a collaborator rather than, and I'm being very specific to being a filmmaker, that sort of auteur mystique of it's my way or the highway, which works for some people, but I don't think the majority of people.
I don't think so either, and I think you can take it outside of film, like you took it right into the relationship conversation.
Yeah.
I think every interaction that we have is a relationship, and communication is key to all of those relationships. And you talked about being married young and having to really work on that communication and become a better communicator. How old were you when you got married the first time?
14.
Holy moly!
No, I was 20. 25.
Were you trying to give me a heart attack?
I was 25, and I think, and that's not, I mean, in the scheme of things, that's not that young. But for me, I was young. I was young in my development when I got married.
Well, and I think that in our 20s, we think we're mature. I mean, I'm 43. I can speak for myself when, yes, that was not a joke. That wasn't like you were married at 14.
Okay,
I'm really
okay.
43.
And specific to my journey, I was a stand-up comedian as the comedy boom of the 80s started. So I started comedy at 18 years old. So from 18 to into my 30s, I traveled on the road, and stand-up comedy is a very narcissistic career, right? Talk about, hey, everybody in the room, I'm the one with the microphone, you're going to laugh and listen, don't talk back. And if you do, I'm going to obliterate you with my comebacks. So that is in your head. And you're also like, I was in the business of selling me, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of like a singer songwriter at least has the songs. A comedian, she just has her persona that they're out there selling, and the jokes come and go. So I think that fed the ego, and I had a modest success at it. So that fed the ego, which made me less of a collaborator because you're the writer, producer, director, editor of your show. And then, if I'm being honest, moving behind the camera into filmmaking allowed me to not worry about my weight, and it allowed me to stop pushing myself as the product, which made me a better collaborator, which made me realize the value of being on a team. I still like being the leader of the team, but it's not just a one-person show.
Yeah, you're open to feedback.
Yeah.
I love the growth that you just described, not only in your
Thank
career, but in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds to me, and let me know if I'm off base, but it sounds to me like you kind of grew into your own and kind of became comfortable with Jordan and who Jordan is and owned your story and moved on.
Yeah, there was, as you were asking me, there was a very specific moment that I was just thinking about last night, actually. So I went from doing comedy into directing. I did a feature film. I got hired for a couple of feature films as I was launching a commercial career, directing, TV commercials. And I fell in love with the short form. It appeals to my ADD, the short term of it all, the army of love versus, movies take a couple years. And my movies weren't big hits like, I wasn't turning down Avengers 2. I just got a lot of work as a commercial director. But there was one moment that stands out where it all clicked. And I was on the set of a multi-day, multi-spot shoot for Eggo waffles. Do you remember those?
Lego my Eggo.
Lego my Eggo. That's what we did. And it was a guy, the bit was for every commercial, a guy was in like a 6-foot foam waffle costume. No face, just hands. He was in a red leotard where his hands and feet would stick out. And he would run around the stage and a giant fork would hit him or a giant plate would hit him. And we'd pour buckets of syrup on him. And all these subversive things would happen to the waffle man. And it was just a joy to do. And I remember working with the ad agency and the two guys, Peter and T.S. They were the team from Leo Burnett, the big agency. And they were so patient with me. And they're a little older than me. And they just taught me so much. And they gave me so much freedom to create this world that I realized how powerful their mentorship was. So I came from the indie film, stand-up comedian to indie film director, narcissist, ego-driven, my way or the highway. And I know better. God has only put her cloth of knowledge upon my back. To this one day when these guys go, well, why don't you try it like this? They didn't tell me how to. They go, why don't you consider this? And they knew the answer, but they allowed me to figure it out. And it's something so absurd as like how a guy would run in a waffle costume. And that's when it clicked like, oh, this is a team. I am part of their team. They need me to do what I do to bring this to life. So I need them for the job and their guidance. They need me to pull it off. And then the client's paying for it all. And that poor guy in the waffle suit is the star of the show. And it just all clicked like, oh, this is the team. So it wasn't me, it was we.
I love that.
It was a little long.
No, I really do love that though, because something that you say there in the story has come up in a lot of these interviews, especially with industry people that I've gotten the opportunity to speak with, and it was all about paying it forward.
Yeah, they definitely paid it forward for me. And if I ever write a second book, The first one is called Commercial Directing Voodoo. It's 20 years of experience for $10. The next book will be called Lego My Ego, based around that nugget and that experience. Because we did those commercials for like 4 or 5 years. I mean, dozens and dozens of them. But it was during the process of the Ego commercials. We're talking like over 15 years ago, from 2003 to 2006, somewhere in there, or that time period, where I thought, wow, this is really interesting how we've congealed the team together. It's really a solid, repeatable machine that we've come up with. I should do a seminar. And I asked those two guys, the creative directors, would they come and do a seminar? So then in 2015, that's when I started my teaching, concurrent with still directing. Like, I'm doing a Kaiser Permanente spot in 2 weeks, but I'm going to run this school. So that's why
all the things you've done: stand-up comedy, writing, filmmaking, directing commercials, giving back. What is something that would surprise people to know about you?
That I'm a hot saucier, that I have a line of hot sauces. Oh So Delicious hot sauce.
Okay, so how did you get into making hot sauce?
So I was in Uruguay. This is how I made a hot sauce. I was in Uruguay shooting a commercial for Dannon yogurt. I don't speak Spanish. Somehow I'm in Uruguay with Spanish children trying to tell. The agency, Y&R, been around for 100 years. Now they're called a bunch of letters. But the young people from the ad agency are sitting there and they're Googling, because YouTube is a thing. So this would have been like 2006 or 7. And they found a clip of my stand-up comedy from the 90s, early 90s. And I had the signature routine, and it was on YouTube for a long time. And they said, hey, you were a comedian. What was that like? And I told them what it was like to be on the road and everything like that. And then that kept happening, shoot after shoot after shoot. People, hey, we saw you on YouTube. So I decided to make a documentary about it, about what it was like to be a stand-up comedian. And that movie's called I Am Comic. So it's a documentary. It was on Netflix and Showtime and all these things. Now it's on iTunes. So how does this get the hot sauce? So I make that documentary. Then comedians start calling me. Hey, do you want to do our comedy show? No, I don't do stand-up comedy for 20 years. I just made a documentary about it. Finally, after resisting that, I make another documentary called I Am Road Comic on iTunes, Amazon, wherever. Then I make a third one called I Am Battle Comic, not about like roasting each other, but about entertaining the troops. So a group of comedians took me with them on tour to Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, and the Kingdom of Bahrain, which I had never heard of. And I filmed that. That became this documentary. Well, it was so moving of a personal experience to support the troops, being anti-war, but seeing young women and men that have... So we came back and I edited the movie, toured it around the country, and gave 100% of the profit, the gross profit, right, to military charities, Military Family Association, veterans groups, a charity where they give service dogs to PTSD, ex-military. Anybody that had a charity that wanted to do a screen, you can have the film. I'll come do a Q&A. It'll be fun. We'll laugh, and you'll make money for your charity. So I set a personal goal of $50,000. I wanted to raise 50 grand combined for all these charities. Like, we did a screening in LA. I think we raised 9 grand that night. So I'm like, I'm going to hit it. But I fell about $9,000 short. So I go, what can I do to keep my personal goal, personal integrity? How can I reach $50,000? Hot sauce. And that's how the hot sauce was born. And to this day, I think we're about maybe $2,300 shy of that goal. So $1 per bottle from Oh So Delicious hot sauce.
Oh, look at that! You have one.
Yeah, this is ghost pepper. It's we're all about flavor. It has a little sting to it. This is good. $1 per bottle that we give to you, break, ship, enjoy, use at home, goes to National Military Family Association, which is a great thing, does great things for families, kids when their parents are deployed and come home, It's just great charity. So that's how I started hot sauce.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then again, all of it giving back. I just think it speaks to who you are, which I do want to touch on too before I ask you our final question of this interview. But you have talked about this incredible life journey and all the things that you've done, including starting hot sauce. But you started off your introduction saying that you were a father, and you've talked about always being a good father. How many kids do you have?
I have 4 kids. Jake, Ben, Gabby, Gigi. They're the pride and joy of my life, and I love them. It is just talking about them, it gives me palpable joy, and I'm so proud of them and the young men and women they've become, and I get to work with them. My wife, and it is like my North Star and my rock, and I just have a special bond with all of them. So being a dad to me means showing up. And so that's my credo. It's like, what can I do for them? And as cool as I think my job is, I know when I get out of the car after a great shoot with a guy in a waffle suit or, a giant car in a box or whatever we did, no matter how cool I think my job is and my day is and how cool I think I am at times, as I walk up the sidewalk to the front door, I realize I want to hear what they did. I want to hear what their day was like. They probably don't care about my day. And I get to work with my sons all the time. So, it's like I've hit the lottery.
It comes across when you talk about it.
Thank you.
I think that's so special. What a journey you've been on, and the love that you give
it's so fun.
Is amazing. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me today and invite me into your studio and to just be in your space.
And by studio, she means a small windowless room in Santa Monica.
But it's your studio.
You know what's great? What's great though is meeting you two, right? And exposing my son to this kind of thing, which he does a lot to give back, and his brother does. And that's the legacy you want. Like, you want the legacy of not just that I'm going to give back, or that my wife has, these gifts that she gives back, but that your kids are going to carry that on. And whether they're your biological kids or your nieces and nephews, or just the tribe of people in your clan, right?
For me, it's come up in a couple of interviews, is a lot of people listen to answer. They don't listen to hear.
What does that mean?
So they'll listen to your story only to answer something back.
Gotcha.
They don't actually listen and to hear what you're saying.